Hey everyone, Tommy V with another amazing podcast episode with special guest Stacy from Invest for Freedom _RN on Instagram. She's a former military nurse. She's a friend of Katie Newman. We had her on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Katie's awesome. Go, Katie. You're doing great.
Amazing.
Keep going. Go follow her. Midshift Investor.
Yes.
Midshift Investor. Her stuff is hilarious. She's awesome. But this is the Be Real podcast, and Real stands for Real Estate and Healthcare Leadership Network. And that's what we're trying to highlight and connect with our healthcare leaders, people that are not just clocking in, clocking out, trading their time for money and neglecting themselves and their future, but are taking initiative to invest in themselves, invest in assets, and, make a difference in the community, whether that's starting your own practice, whether that's working in an admin role, whatever that position of influence is what we're trying to do. And so Stacy checks all those boxes. She's invested in real estate. She's a nurse, and is really trying to move the needle to educate and empower and help people, take care of themselves. So Stacy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. So my name is Stacy. Like he mentioned, I've been in critical care for 12 years, nurse specifically, because I forget that we have all the healthcare professionals that listen to us. Yeah. And then when I moved to Denver in 2018, I had my income cut in half and it was super painful. But that is what led me down this path. So I am still grateful for that. Tough lesson.
And so you're moved to Denver, got the new job, working as a nurse. And one part of your story, you shared with me a little bit about your story that connected with another podcast guest, Jessica Connie. If you have any mortgage questions, reach out to Jessica. She's awesome too. But Jessica sustained an injury and was working as a physical therapist in an outpatient clinic, which is very physically demanding. And I think you had an injury as well. And that was kind of a catalyst that kind of a lot of different things kind of came together to kind of push you to take that jump into real estate.
Yeah. I love to tell people that I'm in the military and I'm used to sacrifice. I'm used to, putting your life on the line, if you will, in that sense of service. I'm in the Air Force, so by no means have I been in like combat or anything super cool. Props to the military members that do that. But just that thought process was already ingrained in me. And even with that, my hospital ran out of masks within the first month. I mean, we were like critically short and we were sharing masks before the sterilization thought came into the picture. And so within the first 2 months of COVID during the shutdown, I had this atrocious rash all over my face. It was painful, but it was just also mortifying because they also stated we can't wear makeup because it was affecting the sterilization. And so I'm just like, I just have this entire rash all over my face. And the dermatologist that I went to was like, yeah, we have to put you on really strong antibiotics for this. And I told him, I'm like, listen, you have to understand that not only is this COVID, but I work in critical care. Like we all know the risks of being on strong antibiotics and being exposed to C. diff and all of that on a regular basis. And if all of that wasn't enough, it was literally during the shutdown that I had herniated a disc, actually 2 of them outside of work. And being a nurse, I made the epic mistake. We're nurses, we don't become the patient. Yes, I know. Can you believe that? So I waited. And I wasn't aware that the shutdown was going to happen, but I didn't seek care. So at the time, I didn't actually know that I had 2 herniated discs. I just knew it was excruciating. And I go to work and they're like, yeah, if you can't do CPR, you can't work. So they send me home and I drain all of my PTO and all of my resources that I was working so hard to build. I didn't fully deplete my emergency fund, but it was just the pain of having to be forced into that. And I talked to them and I was like, what about light duty? What about this? Can I work in HR? Can I do admin? Like, how can I help? And they're like, no, go home. So my choice was to do the disability, short-term disability, or which is like, a whole nother process. So long story short, I ended up wearing all these back braces and doing all these things and having to go to work because I felt there was no other way. And I had already used my PTO and it was just devastating because it was the first time in my career I've always been per diem. And so it was the first time in my career that I had benefits. And I'm like, how is this happening? Like, this is how you treat your team. And during such a critical time, I'm like, you need me. Supposedly you should. So yeah, it was that trifecta of events that I was like, no more. And I bought my property. That all occurred March, April, May. Closed on my first duplex in October. I wasn't messing around.
No,
Yeah.
I truly believe that pain is a bigger motivator than your goals and all those things. And so it sounds like you had tremendous pain from all those different things and they all compressed down. And this was a way out that you saw.
Yeah.
I absolutely identify with what you're saying about the limited PTO. So my wife's 31 weeks pregnant. We have a baby coming in September.
Congrats. That's so
Thanks.
exciting.
And we were on travel. We came off travel. So I started a new job. So of course I have no PTO. And so I did the math. It looks like I'm going to get 4 or 5 days off when the baby comes, and then I'll have 0 PTO. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed, no one gets sick. And also, we don't have any holiday plans because no PTO. It's not, we're
not ideal.
No, we're working in healthcare. You can't trade all your time for money, and it's extremely risky to only rely on one stream of income. So that's where real estate kind of comes into the picture of adding in other streams of income, building your assets in the background. So your money, you put your money into assets so the assets can work harder for you than you worked for them on the front end. So you had the first duplex.
Yeah.
And was it turnkey ready to go, or did you have to renovate it to get it ready?
So not turnkey, but I inherited the tenants that were already in there. So I didn't actually do any of the renovations. And it doesn't need like a full flip, but definitely all of the properties that I've bought were poorly managed by previous owners, not doing updates, not taking care of the tenants. So that's actually been one of the most beautiful parts about this, is that providing safe, clean housing and giving them new appliances or fixing what's actually broken. They are so appreciative. And one thing that I love to tell the audience, because especially as healthcare workers, they're going to get this. So I initially started working as a nurse in Tampa. It was my very first job. I worked in an ER here. Yeah, it's so fun. But in the area that I worked in trauma, and so naturally you work in a gentrifying, not usually in the best neighborhoods. So I got to learn a lot about the crime in the area and things that affected my patients. But long story short, this exact area was my patients, and now they're my tenants. And it's so interesting to me, and I constantly reflect on this, is what is wrong with healthcare that they'll come in as a patient and threaten to sue us, cuss, hurt us, spit, do all of those like violent, harmful things that I was leaving work feeling so defeated, like actually abused, right? And I hated it. I'm like, I'm here to help you. How can you hate me? But it's so interesting because now that they're my tenants and I do those small things and I provide that safe, clean housing, they adore me. And so that's just truly one of my favorite things about real estate, is that mindset shift of I'm still helping. I'm still impacting your life in a good way. And now you're just appreciative. Huge.
Yeah, when you think about landlords, there's always a stigma of like a slumlord or someone that only cares about money. And so having operators and landlords that have a high level of integrity, who better to do that than healthcare workers?
Absolutely.
We care about helping people, not just the injury or the illness, but our healthcare system is supposed to care about the whole person. And so that very like comprehensive approach, I think that healthcare and housing are always, tightly intertwined. Mm-hmm. And so that's another reason that all healthcare providers should be landlords, to help their community and help these people. And you don't got to do anything crazy. It's just taking care of the small stuff. That landlord tenant relationship is very symbiotic, to where you take care of them and they'll take care of you. And leading with respect, taking care of those things, like it's not that hard to be a good landlord.
No. Yeah.
So
it's
some people,
cohesive relationship.
Exactly.
For sure.
Some people overthink it. And if you're a quality person, listening, taking care of the small stuff, that's going to pay you dividends in, down the road.
Yeah.
So we got that first property. At that point, were you still working in healthcare when you got that first duplex?
Yep.
Okay. Still doing patient care.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I worked for the first 3 properties at the bedside. Yeah.
Okay. And then where are you at now? You have
Four duplexes.
Four duplexes.
Yep.
Okay. So 8 doors and one here in Tampa.
All of them are here.
Oh, all of them are here in
Yeah,
Tampa.
they're all actually within 2 miles from each other. Yeah. And speaking of that, I do feel the need to tell the audience, I'm like, the reason we keep looking at each other is because we are in person, but also on video, which I love. I'm here taking care of my properties and some of my tenants. So yeah, it's great to be back and be visiting. And we're at a super cool co-working space in Armature Works. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm so happy to meet you.
Yeah. So we moved, my family, we just moved down here a couple months ago, obviously with the baby on the way. And so we've been to Armature Work because my in-laws live here in Tampa. And so when Stacy and I were trying to figure out where are we going to record, she said, well, what about, there's this place over Armature Works. I was like, perfect. This is like the coolest place in all of Tampa. And thanks to the co-working company here,
Hyde House Heights.
Hyde House Heights. If you
It's
ever
a
need
tongue twister.
Yeah. So if you ever need a cool co-working place, definitely check these folks out.
Definitely. It's so cool.
Yeah. So a little bit of like what's going on right now. So we're real estate investors. Our goal is to try to be honest, transparent, share what we're learning as we go along. So kind of one of the exciting things that we're learning about right now is partial payments on a tenant who's paying late. That's one of the things that we're learning right now. So we have a tenant that has routinely been paying late or kind of making partial payments, and we have a property manager, so they're helping us. If you're out of state, out of area, if you have maybe a property lower than the average median income, an in-person property manager could definitely be an asset. Obviously, there's online platforms, and if you're, not working 40 hours a week and you have a little more flexibility, you can manage it yourself. But for this one, we have an in-person property manager, and we learned that if someone is unpaid, they're paid late, they're overdue, they get their 3-day notice. If they make a partial payment over $200, that resets the 3-day and resets all the timers, even though they're still not caught up on their rent. And so what this tenant has been doing, they've been not paying, get the 3-day, pay more than $200, which resets the 3-day. And then later on, they'll make the rest of the payment. So I called the property manager and I was like, okay, this is like the 4th time that they've done this, because this property manager, the statements run through the 26th of the month for that month. And so instead of getting $2,000 in, we're getting $500 because they're missing the deadline every time. And so I had a conversation with the property manager, and they just logged into the patient, or the not the patient portal, the tenant portal, and turned off the ability to make partial payments for the specific property. So again, I had no idea about any of this, trying to just little nuggets that I'm learning right now.
Do you mind if I elaborate on that a little more too? So yeah, the 3-day notice, just to clarify, is the eviction threshold in the state of Florida. It is different in every state.
Florida is very friendly for landlords.
Yes, I was going to say these are the perks. And it is the irony that I do have one of my tenants has mental health issues and did come off of his medications and has done an array of things, including damaging my property massively, such as cutting a live electric wire. And I just want to let your audience know that the positive part of him not paying rent is what actually allowed me to get him out and get him the help that he needed. Because without that, damaging and all those other components are not enough. And so it is so important when you're buying a property that you understand the rules that are within the state before purchasing, because these become costly very quick.
And just building on top of like another little small nugget for rent, evictions, things like that, is you should never, ever, ever let a tenant prepay months in advance, because when they prepay months in advance, then they have tenant rights that those months cover. So if someone's like, oh, I want to pay 3 months of rent, make like a triple rent payment. Well, now you have no right to have any sort of legal protection for those whole 3 months, because they prepaid all the way through. So even if something super sketchy goes down, there's nothing, your hands are tied. So you should never let a tenant make a prepayment on rent.
Learn something new every day.
Geez, yeah. So being a landlord is exciting, but it's mostly good.
Yes, it is. It is, I swear.
So what are you working on now? Obviously, we're working on our online presence, trying to spread the word. I think the rough estimate is there's over 2 million nurses in the US. There's over 250,000 physical therapists. There's a lot of people that need these conversations about
Absolutely.
investing, retirement, real estate, all of these things and how they all work together. Because when it comes to patient care and work in your healthcare job, there's just no space for these conversations.
Mhm.
There's just
Yeah.
no time when
Yeah.
you're running around in the ICU and doing CPR and you're trying to do your notes and you're
Yeah.
driving around town. You can't have like, whoa, what's my retirement looking like? There's
Right.
just no space. So
I do think a huge part of that too is not just that there's no space for it, but there needs to be the mindset shift first, right? I strongly believe, because I struggled with it so much, that when you are in a profession where you give so much before ever considering yourself, it's hard to break that habit. And so it's not necessarily just that there's no space, it's that nurses are like, oh, that's for rich people or that's for other people, not for me. And so that's one of the huge reasons that I started my Instagram, because I want everybody in healthcare to know I did this on a single nurse income in Denver, which was the worst I was paid, almost to the point where when I was a new grad, brand new nurse, first 2 years in Florida, I almost got paid the same amount. And so that's so hard in such a high cost of living area. And I still had that mindset shift and still did it. So yes, I just want everybody to know I did not no trust fund or anything like that. I saved. I did it all through my own education. I didn't even pay for coaching. Like I said, I listened to all the Bigger Pockets podcasts, read their books. So I just really am trying to spread the word that we can do this, and start with that mindset and then make the space.
yeah, I love what you said about that mindset piece. It's yeah, when you create a culture where it's give, 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 and it's almost frowned upon and it's almost taboo to take care of yourself. Like there's been a huge rise in like mental health and self-care days and a lot of those things, which is good and positive, but it's still nowhere near it needs to be.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. You go on an airplane, the first thing they always tell you, when the oxygen mask comes
Mhm.
down,
Yep.
put on your own oxygen mask before helping that person next to you. And we need to apply that to the healthcare community. The pandemic really provided a huge stressor,
Catalyst. Yes.
to kind of expose some of those faulty patterns, faulty management, faulty things, almost like a wildfire through the forest where it burns out all the bullshit.
Yes.
So I really think that that's going to help be a positive catalyst moving forward for the healthcare community.
Yeah. I do love to use my Instagram for educating the public on that component too, because so many people are like, gosh, why don't healthcare professionals just get over it? We know it sucked. And I'm like, it's because it's not about the pandemic. This was all in place. It sucked before. It's just that that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I can't say that enough, because I would want people to know, like, COVID didn't do this. It's the system, it's the process, it's the way it's been. That was just the grand finale. And I don't want COVID to steal that from us.
Oh man, you're exactly right. That's exactly what Katie said. She
Mhm.
said all these things about, the 6-to-1 nursing ratios and the low pay and the,
Yep.
if you're physically not able, then can you do your job? There is no light. All those things were going on before.
Always.
Yep. And so
Yep.
this has just kind of been an exposing moment saying, uh-oh.
Yeah.
We
And
gotta
I think
deal
it's
with
the
it.
first time the public started to become aware of it because of the nature of the pandemic, which is totally fine. I do think it was helpful in that sense that they became more aware. But now I think it's just crucial to continue that education, that it wasn't just because of that. It's the system, it's overarching.
So, in kind of a brief summary, when you were weighing out the different, investing vehicles,
Mhm.
I know you said you went down the bigger pockets rabbit hole, got all the education, and got sold on real estate. What was kind of your light bulb moment of, okay, this makes sense. This is why I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do crypto or stocks
Yeah.
or what made you choose real estate?
So mostly it was because it made sense to me, but I think the biggest part is that there's an asset, like a tangible physical asset that's collateral to the investment. Whereas crypto and the stock market and all those other things, you put your money in and you hope for the best. And there's nothing, right? No tangible asset on the other end. And certainly our economy is nowhere near within anybody's control, not even our government's, clearly. So that's what I loved about real estate, because you can't control the market fluctuations, and it still applies the same way. But you can control your contribution into real estate, forcing that value through updating your property, making it nicer. You do have the benefit of market appreciation and all these other components. So that was why I chose that. But then I specifically chose Tampa because it was through a mentor that helped me realize I was trying to house hack in Denver, which is phenomenal. But he was like, you want cash flow, not to live for free. And so when I ran the numbers, I could replace my rent, and you're living rent free. So $1,500 is something more I could save. But as far as cash flow goes, again, you have control over it, and you can scale it further. One house in Denver bought my 4 duplexes in Tampa. So just really focusing when you're getting started on what your end goal is. If it's appreciation and you only care about replacing your income, perfect. Denver's awesome. House hacking is awesome. But again, I just wanted that cash flow.
Exactly. So there's definitely, it's kind of a seesaw of cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits. It's kind of what combination are you seeking? And that's because it can be so unique to your situation and your short-term and long-term goals, how you can kind of cater a plan that fits that. So I love what you said. Okay, if you're trying to live for free is different than trying to get cash flow. A different way to say that is you can only save to zero, but your growth can always be exponential.
Yes.
So a lot of people always get hung up on, budgeting, saving money. Oh, don't buy your Starbucks coffee because you're going to save, that. But with the better way to think about it is, okay, what is the upside? Like, it's easier to go make $10,000 than it is to save $10,000.
Exactly.
So I love that you touched on that. So now that with your online presence, like your target audience is just nurses or all healthcare folks, and are you encouraging them to keep working in the bedside, or are you trying to get people out of the bedside? Are you trying to help them use it as a vehicle to move into assets?
Yeah. So my message is more generalized towards all healthcare professionals. Something that I really struggled with was when all the abuse, if you will. I kind of hate using that word, but because I'm not a victim.
Abuse and toxic, those buzzwords now, right?
But the struggle was like, I felt like I was meant for this, right? The adrenaline, the challenge, the caring and giving back. Like, I couldn't imagine a more perfect career that did all those components. And that was before I started. So once I got into it and I was like, oh my God, this is so broken. I took it so personally. And I was the only one that was voicing the concerns at the time. So I felt so alone. And so my messaging through my Instagram now is that, you're not alone. It is very much a broken system. So regardless of what your leadership or anybody is telling you, it's not us, it's them. But most importantly, I want people to know that, like, if you are still fulfilled, you can continue to be a healthcare professional and just diversify your income. So that way, if they do anything, you can leave at any moment and you have that empowerment. But also for me, for instance, I've always loved taking care of children. But in Denver specifically, our pay was so much worse. So I could never work at Children's because it was the lowest paying in the city. And so I sold my soul to even making a few more dollars an hour. And it was horrible. Biggest regret of my life, because it had the worst impact on my mental health. To summarize, though, I just want healthcare professionals to be able to work in an area that they want, even if it means taking a pay cut and having that diversification, supplementing your income so you're not sacrificing your lifestyle because of it, and then being able to have that empowerment to walk away and stand up.
Man, I love that. So you're talking about being a healthy practitioner operating from a position of strength instead of a position of need
and self-care.
And so how much better can you take care of your patients and serve your team from a position of strength rather than a position of it's all about leverage, all about your positioning.
100%.
So specifically for physical therapists, if you want to be a cash practice owner, like you want to open and operate your own clinic and just knock the socks off the service for your team, for your employees, and for your patients, then you got to have that buffer to help you transition to run your own clinic. And so that, man, I love what you're saying there.
Thank you.
That, the buzzword for healthcare is quality of life. Like, what are quality of life indicators? How are we looking at this as a whole person? And we got to look at ourselves and our healthcare teammates the same way and say, hey, well, how is this a whole person? And how does my career fit as a piece of that instead of my career being the whole thing?
Yep. Yeah, I'm calling it the era of medical professionals first, our self-care first, so we can provide better care to others. Because it truly, I mean, that's the way it should be. And it's so crazy that we need to even explain that to people. I've had people come for me on Instagram saying that, and I'm not saying that we're selfish or that we aren't going to care for you, but I just don't understand why people are like, oh, my life is in your hands, but don't eat, don't pee. And I'm like, what? Where else in America or what other profession does that occur? Like, nowhere.
No other profession.
I smile, but I'm like, it blows my mind.
Totally right. So what are your main, do you have any like programs or handouts or books, or what kind of stuff do you have? I know you said you have you're being the serial podcast guest.
Yes. Yeah. So a few things. Everything on my Instagram is free. And I wanted to do that on purpose. To, like I said, spark that idea in somebody to motivate them that they can do this too. But also because I had so many mentors and information that was freely given to me. So I feel passionate about paying it forward to others. So I'm just sharing everything I learned for free. And all I ask is that I'm really trying to create a community, a movement to contribute to the revolution. So I just love having new followers. I love connecting with all the healthcare professionals that are trying to make a difference and contribute to that revolution. So that's what my Instagram is, just sharing my free knowledge and gathering everybody so that when the time comes, we're ready to be a part of that.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody that's maybe researching about real estate, they're trying to learn, what would be some kind of books, podcasts, videos? What would you say people should start with to start that learning process?
Yeah. So I always recommend to people, the most important thing is to start with what you want. What are you trying to achieve? Because people that have listened to my podcast interviews will write me and they'll be like, how do I get started? And I'm like, well, what are we starting? So you need that clarity because there's so many, and that's one of my favorite things about real estate is that similar to nursing, there's so many different strategies and areas and so many different ways to be successful in this. So what are we doing? Like, I can't answer how to start until I know where we're going. And so that looks like asking, what do I have time to commit to? Short-term rental is a heavy customer service and time commitment. It is not passive. So if you want passive income, then you're immediately over on long-term rentals, syndications, those elements of things. Don't even consider short-term. And so getting that clarity and then going to Bigger Pockets, I'll always recommend them because it's free. Love them. They're phenomenal human beings. And picking out the podcasts and the books and whatever, but niching down first. So you're not chasing this shiny object syndrome and doing what I did. They called it analysis paralysis, and it is, I was fearful. I was so scared to lose my hard-earned money, but I was also all over the place. I'm learning about rehab. I'm learning about BRRRRs. I'm learning about house hacking in Denver. And I just spent so much time because it's so overwhelming. There's so much information. So choose your strategy, then pick very specific podcasts and books and start learning that way.
Yeah, that's so true. Alex Hormozy, I'm a big fan of him. He has two frameworks, or he uses one framework for two different kind of emotions to kind of help distill where you're at. He says there's kind of two buckets. There's the one bucket where you feel very anxious and overwhelmed, and that means you have a lot of options. And so the problem that you're solving is trying to pick one.
Yeah.
The second bucket is you feel hopeless and stuck. And that means that you don't have any options. And so so if you're in the boat where you're feeling hopeless, stuck, trapped, and you don't have any options, well, that's where you need to find a community, connect with people, and figure out what are some ideas.
Yeah.
If you're on the other side and you're having shiny object syndrome, ADD, analysis paralysis, overwhelm, anxiety, well, that means you have too many things and you need to distill down and pick one and focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
But yeah, to answer your question about my serial podcast interviews, that's a twofold purpose. It's to get the word out to healthcare professionals that this is possible for anybody outside of just maybe our specific real estate network. So it's just increasing that reach. But then the other big part of this is that public education. It breaks my heart and is infuriating at the same time that we work so hard to get these bills to federal level for safe staffing and for everything else, the ratios and for breaks and all the things that we're advocating for. And because healthcare is such a massive economic producer, the lobbyists control the messaging to the public, and they have voted against this, which is why we don't have a federal law to protect us and to mandate these things. And I feel that the only way I can contribute to that, because I can't, if you've ever seen how much the lobbyists contribute to healthcare lobbying, it's disgusting. And one day maybe I'll make that my goal to be that rich. But in the meantime, because I am dedicated to taking action now, my way of doing that is trying to have a louder voice than them, which is in a big, hairy, audacious goal. But put me in, coach, because I'm here for it. And I just want the public to know that this is still happening. It's unsafe. And there's so much research that shows the more time we spend with the patient in a safe way, the ratios mandate, the better the outcomes through and through. Like, how is this even a conversation? But it's obviously because of the money that it makes the hospital, the system, the government. And I'm just here to speak against that and let the public know, and I can't even remember the woman's name, but there was just the head of a nursing organization in America literally just spoke out and said, yeah, patient ratios are ineffective. It's just not going to work. There's no point. And I'm like, actually, all this research says otherwise. We can do better, but that's our own, right? That's our own people educating them poorly against what's best for the patient and best for healthcare professionals. So I'm screaming it from the mountaintops.
Yeah, I love that message. It's so applicable. And I think the thing that is extra challenging, so obviously I'm a physical therapist, you're a nurse, physical therapists, we have a limited amount of autonomy to where we can bill and generate revenue. Nurses are unable to generate revenue on their own. So you have to be inside of a system, which makes you scope capped and kind of tied and tethered.
Yep.
And so that's leverage that the system and they have over nurses that's very, very powerful, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, is there anything else that we should touch on? I think we covered a wide range of topics here. We got everything up on the board here.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Nothing else. Just please join me. I love connecting with people. I've met so many amazing healthcare professionals because of this Instagram. It's really been a joy and a surprise. So please follow and connect with me. I would love to meet you.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm trying to build this real estate network, real estate and healthcare professional leadership network, and Stacy's part of it. She's trying to make a big impact, make a big change, and help lead and educate and empower and inspire and all those things. And so these are the kind of people that we want to work with and be around and help encourage and help each other best we can. So thanks so much for your time. Really appreciated you making time in Tampa for us to do this in-person thing. And hopefully we inspire someone. We can help them feel less trapped and stuck and give hope and
Yeah.
do all those things.
We ride at Dong.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and say goodbye and sign off. And thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks.